All right, let's dive in. We're about to take a journey into a new financial world, one that started out as this kind of obscure idea and has now, well, it's become a global force. This is the digital frontier, and we're here to understand cryptocurrency.
You know, for centuries, we've thought about money in one way. It comes from governments, it's controlled by banks, but this new technology, it's challenging that entire system. It really forces us to ask a huge question. Is the very nature of money about to change forever?
To even begin to answer that, we've got to get past all the hype and the buzzwords. So let's start at square one. What exactly is cryptocurrency?
Okay, so at its core, cryptocurrency is just digital money. It's secured by something called cryptography, which is just complex math. But here's the revolutionary part, the key word, decentralization. What that means is that no single company, no government, no bank is in charge. And, well, that changes everything. So when you put all these pieces together, you get this really fascinating dynamic. Because it's digital, you can send it anywhere in the world instantly. Because it's decentralized, it has this independence. But, and this is a big but, there's a trade-off, volatility. The value can swing like crazy, which makes it a very high risk, but also potentially high reward asset. I mean, just look at the difference when you put it side by side with traditional money. The US dollar, it's controlled by a central authority. You can hold it in your hand or see it in your bank account. Cryptocurrency, on the other hand, is born from a network. It only exists digitally, and it's sent directly from person to person. It completely bypasses all the old gatekeepers. Okay, so you might be wondering, how can you possibly trust a currency that doesn't have a bank in the middle of it? Well, the answer lies in its engine, this incredible technology called the blockchain. So try to imagine a shared, public, digital notebook, and everyone on the network has an identical copy of this notebook. When you want to send crypto to someone, you basically announce it to the whole network. Then, all these computers check their copy of the notebook to make sure you actually have the funds. Once it's verified, your transaction gets bundled with a bunch of others onto a new page, which they call a block, and that block gets added to the end of the notebook, the chain. And just like that, you have a permanent, unchangeable record of the transaction.
So really, the trust in this whole system boils down to these three pillars. You have the decentralized ledger, which means no single person can go back and change it. You have cryptographic security, which makes it almost impossible to tamper with. And you have the peer-to-peer network, which gets rid of the need for a bank. Together, they create this remarkably strong system for exchanging value. All right, so we've got the how it works down. But the next big question is, where is all of this technology actually headed? We're starting to see this really interesting shift away from crypto just being a thing people speculate on to something with real-world uses and real integration. And you can see this adoption happening from a few different angles. You've got Wall Street getting into the game with things like Bitcoin ETFs. At the same time, companies are using the tech for really practical stuff, like making international payments cheaper. Slowly but surely, it's moving from the fringes right into the mainstream. Now, whenever something gets this big, you know the regulators are going to show up. And it's a real double-edged sword. On one hand, having clear rules is absolutely essential to protect consumers and give big investors the confidence to jump in. But on the other hand, if governments get too heavy-handed, they could end up crushing the very innovation that makes this space so exciting. Honestly, figuring out this balance is probably the single biggest challenge for the industry's future. You know, the original idea of crypto has inspired all these new types of digital money. You have things called stablecoins. They're decentralized, just like Bitcoin, but they're designed to avoid all that crazy volatility by pegging their value to something stable, like the US dollar. And then you have the total opposite, CBDCs, or central bank digital currencies. These are centralized digital currencies issued by governments themselves. The idea is to give you the efficiency of digital money, but with the stability of a traditional currency. But here's where things get really wild. The vision for this technology now goes way beyond just money. There's something called decentralized finance, or DeFi, which is basically trying to rebuild the entire financial system, lending, trading, you name it, without any banks. At the same time, this idea of tokenization is letting us represent real-world things, like a piece of art or a building, as a digital token on the blockchain. This could completely change how we think about ownership.
Okay, but let's be real for a second. The road ahead isn't perfectly smooth. Any serious look at this topic has to deal with the very real challenges this technology has to overcome before it can really reach its full potential. There are three big roadblocks that everyone in this space is trying to solve. First is scalability. Right now, most blockchains just can't handle the same number of transactions as something like Visa. Second, you have the huge environmental impact of networks like Bitcoin. That's a major concern. And finally, there's security. See, the network itself is secure, but you are your own bank. If you lose your password, your funds could be gone forever.
So after looking at the tech, the potential, and the challenges, let's just zoom out. What does this massive shift really mean for all of us and for the future?
At the end of the day, this is the vision. Despite all the volatility and all the hurdles, the underlying promise of this technology is a huge evolution in how we exchange and record value. The ultimate goal for the people who believe in it is a financial system that's more open to everyone, way more efficient, and not controlled by just a handful of powerful institutions.
And so that leaves us with this final forward-looking question. We've seen it challenge money, we've seen it challenge finance, but the core ideas, decentralization and secure digital ownership, are incredibly powerful. So as we close this out, the real question to think about is, what part of our world will this technology change next?